If you're a people pleaser, it can be hard to tell the difference between accommodating somebody else's preferences and people pleasing to the point where you are giving too much and sacrificing a boundary. So, I'm going to talk about 3 steps to help you clarify what values are at stake and make a decision that is aligned and intentional. So, the first step is to pause. Just pause. I have a rule that when I get a request for something related to work that is above and beyond what I've already committed to, I give myself at least 24 hours before I respond. And so that is how I build in a space to make sure that I'm not reactive in responding to something because it feels urgent or it feels important, but I haven't really given myself the chance to assess, is it actually urgent and how important is it actually? And so creating a pause forces you to wait until any initial emotional reaction subsides. And so then you can approach your decision without being so activated. Now, our emotions activate behavior for a good reason. It's one of the main reasons why emotions are so helpful. It's because they direct us towards behavior. But if you struggle with determining where your boundary is or how to hold a boundary, your emotions might need to get back to baseline before you can really clearly figure out what's the best next step. So, step number 2 is to clarify your values. So, usually, if you're finding yourself having a tough time deciding something, let's say a family member asks you for a favor and you're having a hard time figuring out, whether to say yes or no, or, am I doing too much? And all of that back and forth that you can get into. It can be really helpful to intentionally clarify what's at stake. And so, what I mean by that is consider if you say yes to the request, would that be acting in accordance with something that you value? So maybe you value generosity. And so a family member has asked you for a favor that's going to take time out of a weekend afternoon, but you value generosity. You love this person, you value reliability. On the other hand, if you're not sure whether that's the best call, it's helpful to ask, well, what are the values that I would be deprioritizing if I said yes to this request? So maybe the value that you would deprioritize would be a value for solitude. Maybe you had a plan to do something on your own or relaxation or rest. It could also be a value for boundaries. That at least helps you clarify what's at stake so that you can make a more intentional and conscious decision. And you'll know why you're saying yes if you say yes. And it'll be clearer to you why you're saying no if you're saying no. So if you say yes, it's because, yes, I had already planned to do this thing, but at this particular time, based on my value for generosity and my relationship with this person, I am going to give this time in my afternoon. That is much different from, okay, sure, fine. Yes, I know you need help. Oh, I feel guilty. I'm just going to help you, right? It's very different from a knee-jerk reaction that's guilt-driven without really understanding what the guilt might be about or if the guilt is actually warranted or appropriate. So that's step number 2, clarify your values. Now, sometimes this might get you to the point where you already have a clear and a values aligned sense of what to do. But sometimes we get here and we tell ourselves, yes, I'm going to say yes because I'm doing it for fill in the blank. I'm doing it for this person or I'm doing it for this. But we have not paused to do step number 3, which is assess your bandwidth at this time right now. So the value clarification piece helps you determine what your reasoning would be, or at least gives you a way of thinking intentionally about whether to say yes or no. The assess your bandwidth right now question forces you to clarify, when can I make this values trade? Is this right now at this time a time where I have enough to give? And that is a really critical question because it's one thing to recognize what values are at stake. It's quite another thing to recognize whether you have the capacity at that time to give some of your energy and your time that you were going to use here over here. So, if this family member had asked you last week when you didn't have as much to carry from work, you might have had a different response to the question. And I think for people pleasers, it's hard to confront the last question of, do I have the bandwidth right now? Because if in your heart of hearts you know the answer is no, you might want to avoid confronting that, because if you fully accept and acknowledge that even though you want to do this thing to help somebody, that if you know you don't have the bandwidth for it, then that means that you would have to say no. And saying no introduces a whole nother set of challenges. So, in an effort to avoid the discomfort of having to communicate the no, we avoid actually accepting that we don't have the bandwidth right now. And then we go do the thing. And then we're burned out, we're tired, we're frustrated, we maybe resent the other person for imposing upon us. And we get to those places because we haven't taken the time and done the work to clarify internally what is driving our decision making, and not just what, but when. So paying attention to where you are now helps you make an informed decision for now. It's not what you wish the circumstances were. It's not what you wish you had done in the past. It's where are you at now, and what can you give, and what do you need to keep yourself running, to keep you healthy, to keep you in a place where you can continue to build energy and increase your bandwidth so that in the future you can say yes and mean it and not feel like you're doing it out of obligation or doing it out of misplaced guilt. So, just to review, the 3 steps are pause, clarify your values, assess your bandwidth. And at the end of these 3 steps, you will have a clearer sense of what actions are going to be values aligned. Not only that, but what action you can actually fully present yourself for so that you know that you are intentional and have the capacity